Hello everyone, welcome to the Somnia Developer Education Series, Somnia 101. In this session, we are going to learn how to create subgraphs using ORMI on Somnia. Let's get started. A bit of a background before we get into the code lab. Subgraphs are indexing solutions that allow developers to efficiently query structured blockchain data without scanning the entire blockchain. What does this mean? Using a quick visual representation. On the right of your screen, you can see a user interface, and on the left, you can see the network, which is the Somnia blockchain. And in the middle, you have a subgraph service that allows developers build user interfaces where their end users do not have any need to query the blockchain directly, but instead subgraph catch this data and then present it to the user interface by indexing events emitted from contract. Here is what a subgraph workflow looks like. First, smart contracts emit events and subgraphs captures and processes these events. So this data is indexed off-chain and stored in a queryable database. That way, developers can query this data via GraphQL API and retrieve structured blockchain insights, thereby building complete user interfaces. Let's get right into the code. The documentation for creating subgraphs using ORMI on Somnia, it's available in the developer docs. You can go in there and find all the commands that you need to run to start creating your subgraphs. And one of those commands is the command to initialize a new subgraph service. So we'll begin our project by first of all creating the directory where we want our project to exist. After we have created the directory, we want to run the commands to initialize a subgraph. So copy this command, paste it in. GraphQL have been installed on this machine, and this is the command to initialize a new subgraph project. So we're going to take the contract name, the contract address, and then the folder where we want it to live on our machine. We'll go to the Somnia Explorer to find a smart contract address that we can build a subgraph for. For our project, we are going to be using this smart contract, which is the Somnia Flip. It has close to 500,000 transactions, and it has been verified. Please note that when you want to build subgraphs, you would want to rely on smart contracts that have been verified on chain already. So that way, when you go into the contract, you would be able to look into the contract code and then see the events emitted, which we are going to index and return all of this data from the smart contract. And also you'd be able to get the access to the ABI data, which we are also going to use in our subgraph. So now that we have these smart contracts that we want to index the data, we copy the smart contract address and go back into our code editor. So we'll change a couple of information here. Change the contract name to SumFlip. Update the smart contract address to the address that we copied. And the network is Somnia.testnet. Add the directory name and call it SumFlip. So it's going to give us a couple of prompts for us to create the subgraph. Somnia is EVM compatible, so we are going to select the Ethereum environment, and we're going to select the Subgraph Studio service and use the SumFlip slug, the directory to create it in SumFlip, and then the contract address, which we have already passed. So we are not able to pass the ABI from the Etherscan service to Somnia. So we just indicate that we don't want to retry. And of course, we are also unable to pass the start block. So we are going to manually input the start block later on. So we're going to click no. And then for the ABI file part, we can go ahead and open the folder. Now that we are inside the directory, we want to add a file calling it abi.json. Go back to the smart contract and then read the ABI and click on this button to copy the ABI. Now that we are armed with the ABI, we can simply paste it and save that file. So when we indicate the parts, file paths where this ABI can be found in our application. For the start block, we also have to go back inside the smart contract to find out when the contract creator created the first transaction that created the smart contract, and then indicates that block as our start block where we want the subgraph service to index the data. This is the transaction where it was created. We want to make this our start block. Copy it, so paste that as a start block. The contract name is SumFlip. And of course, yes, we want to index the contract event as entities. This will help us create the entities of the events that we need indexed. No, we are not going to add another contract. Running that command has created the Somnia Flip directory. A quick look into it. The important part here are the schema.graphql file. From aligning to index the smart contract event as entities, it has taken the one event in this smart contract, which is a flip result, and it would be able to give us all of the data emitted by every call of the particular function that emits flip results. So to continue, we will change directory to the SumFlip directory that was created for us. And what we want to do next is run the command to create artifacts that would enable us deploy the subgraph to the ORMI subgraph service. To do that, we run the command graph code generate and graph build. So this will generate the artifacts that we need to deploy the subgraph. That is completed. Next, we want to deploy the subgraph to the ORMI service. To deploy subgraphs to the ORMI service, you'd have to use the subgraph.somnia.network service, and you log into an account or create one if you don't already have an account. Once signed into the ORMI service, I am able to see all subgraphs that I have created, and also able to see subgraphs created by other users. So this is a list of subgraphs that are currently available on the ORMI service. The critical thing that you want here right now is the API key that will enable you to deploy your own subgraph that you just created. So go ahead and copy the API key and go back to deploy your subgraph. So to deploy the subgraph, you would need to run the command graph deploy, and then the name that you want the folder to be called on your ORMI dashboard. And of course, you pass in your ORMI private key as well. So I'm going to rename this to, I'm going to rename the folder where we want it to be called on the ORMI dashboard to SumFlip. Pass in your private key. Hit enter to deploy. For this version, I want to say v0.1.1. Deploy that. Now that it has been deployed, the next thing is to go to the subgraph.somnia.network service to see the deployed subgraph. The subgraph is deployed and you can start querying it. So click on Somnia Flip, and you can find the queries here in the Explorer directory. I want to go to Flip results, and let's say we want to see all the results obtained so far. So these are all the results that have been obtained from the smart contract so far, and we can add the particular player that had those results, and we can see the player address for those particular results, and of course if you want to see the transaction hash for that result. So you can take this data and go build out a user interface where every player can see the results per each transaction that they made on chain. Thank you. And with that, we have come to the end of today's lesson. Thank you for watching to the end of this video. Kindly leave your questions, comments, and feedback. You can also ask your questions on Discord in the dev channel. I'm always available to answer. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.